Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another installment of Scout Selections here for Monday, November 18th. Before we get into today's play of the day, quick recap of what happened yesterday. We picked up a play of the day loss with Ezekiel Elliott over in the rushing yard category. Unfortunately, Zeke never got going in the ground game. The Lions came into the game as one of the worst rush defenses in the entire league. The Cowboys had their offensive line relatively healthy once again, and yet the Cowboys decided to go to a pass-first game plan with Prescott, who ended up throwing for 440-something yards, and Elliott ended up with 2 touchdowns, but unfortunately he was not even close to the total. So, unfortunately, that's another loss with regard to the NFL player prop. They haven't really been going well lately, so I probably will stop doing them at least as frequently as I have been moving forward. But either or, that's behind us. We'll look for a bounce-back win today with some college basketball, and the play of the day will be on Utah State, minus 19, which is available on DraftKings as they take on UTSA at home. And the main reason why we like this spot here for Utah State is twofold. One, because of the fact that UTSA, even though they are 0-4 and they have just been absolutely terrible so far this season, they actually haven't played in 8 days. And I have to wonder how much rust is going to play a factor into this. If you look at UTSA's schedule, they're 0-1 on the road this season, but that's inaccurate because all 4 games they've played have either been on a neutral site or a complete road game. But as a whole, they ended up, just to go through all their games, they lost at Oklahoma by 18. They lost on a neutral to Southern Illinois by 12. They lost on a neutral to Oakland by 13. And they lost on a neutral to Delaware by 12. That last game occurred on November 10th. And they haven't played since. So I question how well this team is going to play now that they haven't played in over a week. I think they're going to come out relatively flat. Meanwhile, Utah State is undefeated. They are 4-0, 4-0 at home, and they struggled initially in the first game against Montana State, but Montana State actually beat UNC Greensboro. They're 4-1, so they're actually a decent team from a mid-major conference. But after that, they've won every single game by at least 27 points. Utah State dominates on the rebounding category, as they are averaging 8 more rebounds per game. They're averaging 9 more assists per game. They're averaging 2 more blocks per game. They're shooting 14% from the floor higher. If you look at the stats, Utah State's shooting 49.4% from the floor. Very efficient. And UTSA is shooting 35.5%. That's their field goal percentage. It's one of the worst field goal percentages in the entire country. This team simply just cannot put the ball in the basket, and they're also giving up over 80 points per game. So this team can't shoot well, they can't rebound well, and they can't defend well. I think Utah State's going to blow this team out by at least 25. Utah State's also averaging 87 points per game, so they are capable of scoring a lot of points. And if you actually look at some of the injury news, their star player, Neemias Queta, has not played all season long due to a knee injury, and last season he averaged roughly 11-9. In terms of the game today, he's been rumored to get closer and closer to a return, and he is questionable for this game, so he is possibly able to go. Now, he has not played any games, so Utah State should be able to cover anyway, but if Queta is able to go, that adds another big body on the boards, and I think Utah State should win this rebounding advantage by at least 12. So I think based on that, I think Utah State will dominate the boards. They get to the foul line. They're also, I forgot to mention, Utah State's shortest player on the entire roster, including the scrubs, is 6'3", and UTSA's best player is 6 feet tall. So I think they should be able to guard him relatively well. In terms of Utah State, they're just a very solid overall team. There's a reason why this team is number 15 in the country, and nobody's talking about them. It's because they play for a relatively unknown conference, except unless you're an actual college basketball, fan, because they play in the Mountain West, and nobody really bothers to watch the Mountain West. But this team is really good, and UTSA so far this season is pretty underwhelming, as they are 0-4, and they haven't really even come close to being competitive. And the best team they've faced is Oklahoma, and Oklahoma, in my opinion, is worse than Utah State. I just think Utah State's going to win this game by at least 25. I think Utah State will dominate the boards. I think they'll get to the foul line a lot. I think that they should force Jackson off of his game for UTSA due to their length and their ability to guard him on the perimeter. And other than that, though, I just think Utah State's going to dominate. So other than that, the play of the day will be on Utah State minus 19, which is available on DraftKings at minus 110. Now, in terms of some of the leans for the rest of today's card, I will start out with the NFL. You have Kansas City versus Los Angeles. Kansas City's been bet up from -4 to -5, and the total's been bet up from 49 to 52.5. In terms of the game itself, I hope the Chargers are competitive just because I don't want this game to turn into an absolute blowout. At the same point, though, I think this game will be close, but I think Kansas City will make some plays down the stretch, and the Chargers will choke as they normally do. I think the Chargers will look to control the time possession by keeping the ball on the ground with Melvin Gordon. So I would lean to the Gordon over in rushing yards, but at the same point, I just think Kansas City's too good offensively. Defensively, they stink, and that's going to be their Achilles heel. But as a whole, I'll lean to the over, and I'll lean to Kansas City. I think this game will be close. I think Kansas City will score a touchdown late. I think they'll win by 7. And I think that Mahomes will go off once again for 300-something plus receiving passing yards as well as 3 or more passing touchdowns. I think Mahomes is going to put on a show, and I think that Kansas City will make enough plays to win this game. So lean to Kansas City and lean to the over. Now, in terms of the NBA, looking at the card, the Knicks have been bet up for -3 to -5 against Cleveland. I'm taking Cleveland. Cleveland just smacked this team by about 20-something about a week or two ago. And I know that the Knicks will be looking for revenge and all that other stuff, and there are rumors that the coaching staff is on the hot seat. But as a whole, I just think Beilein's a better coach than Fizdale, and I think that Cleveland's roster, even though it's not great, I don't think New York's roster is much to write home about either. So I'll lean to Cleveland there. I just don't think that the Knicks should be laying 5 in pretty much any basketball game ever. So I'll lean to Cleveland on the underdog there. I think they could win the game outright, so lean to Cleveland on that. Moving on, lean to Toronto minus the 8.5. Money's coming on Charlotte. Do I really care? No. Toronto's just a very solid team. Even with Kyle Lowry's injury, Van Vliet's been stepped up quite nicely into the starting role. And Toronto's just a much better team. They're really good at home. And Charlotte is one of the worst teams in the league. Lean to Toronto there. I think they'll win this game by double digits, and I think they'll get the job done. Moving on, you have Brooklyn versus Indiana. Brooklyn's been bet down for -4 to -3 and even -2.5 at some spots. Lean to the Pacers here. I'm a Nets fan. I've seen us play. Not a great team at all. We don't play any defense, and Indiana is going to dominate us probably just based on the turnover differential, because Brogdon's been unbelievable this season. He's a fantastic point guard, and I just simply think Indiana has too many weapons. I think they're too fundamentally sound, and I think Brooklyn will take too many poor shots from the three-point line, which Indiana will contest relatively nicely. Lean to the Pacers there. I think they'll win this game outright. Moving on, you have Houston versus Portland. Lean to Houston, -7.5. I just don't think Portland's that good. I've seen them play on numerous occasions. They might be competitive for a half, but as a whole, this team falls apart down the stretch. They just don't have that good of a team. I don't think the chemistry's there. I think that this team has fizzled out. I don't even know if they're going to make the playoffs this year. That's how bad I think this team potentially is. They've been dealing with a ton of injuries. Nurkic is not back yet. Zach Collins is out, so they're lacking just big men in the front court. And now they bring Carmelo Anthony into the mix. Congratulations. Good luck with that. I'll lean to Houston. This team's been rolling lately, and I think Harden will dominate whether Westbrook plays or not. Hopefully for Houston, Capella is able to go. But as a whole, I just think Houston has too many weapons. I'll lean to Houston on that one. Moving on, you have Milwaukee versus Chicago. Lean to Milwaukee. Simply put, Chicago can't guard Giannis. Giannis will go for another 30, 15, and 5 game because nobody can stop him. And I just think Milwaukee's just the better overall team. I also think that Chicago's head coach is terrible, and I think that he will just make some really questionable substitutions in the course of the game that will cause the Bucks to blow it open. Lean to Milwaukee. I think they'll win by double digits. Moving on, you have Dallas versus San Antonio. I actually wrote an article about this game for Winners and Whiners. So you can check that out if you want to. I took Dallas as San Antonio's in the middle of a losing streak. They're kind of a bit distracted after Popovich and some of the coaching staff got ejected in the last game as they ended up losing to Portland. San Antonio just has not been good this season. I know that everyone expects them to turn around at some point, and I think they will. But in this spot, I'll lean to Dallas. I just think Dallas is a better overall team right now. They're pretty good at home. I think Doncic and Porzingis are matchup nightmares for San Antonio, and I think Dallas should win this game relatively easily. Lean to Dallas on that one. Moving on, you have Utah versus Minnesota. Money's come in on the over from 217.5 to 219. I'll lean to the over in this one. I'll back the line movement there. In terms of the spread, I think Utah will win the game. Do I think they'll cover 9.5? It's tricky to bet on a team like Utah to cover because they're not really known for their offense. Minnesota's been pretty bad the last couple of games. I had a little bit of money on them against Houston a couple of days ago when Minnesota was at home, and they ended up having to play the Rockets without Capella or Westbrook, and they ended up losing by 20-something outright. Minnesota just... something about them's just off. I don't really know what it is. They just lack an identity and they lack a passion. This team checks out of games way too early. So I don't really like betting on spreads with Timberwolves games, but I'll lean to the over as I think both teams should do pretty well offensively. Moving on, you have Phoenix versus Boston. I'm going to lean to Phoenix here. Phoenix was at -3.5. They're up to -4 in some spots. This line just looks very questionable considering the fact that Boston has been really good this season. Boston did lose a heartbreaker to the Kings in their last game, but Phoenix, the fact that they're favored in this game tells me all I need to know. I think Phoenix is just going to win this game outright relatively easily. Lean to Phoenix on that one. And lastly, you have the Clippers versus the Thunder. Total's been bet up from 219.5 to 222, and you have the spread going from 9.5 to 9. I'm still going to lean towards the Clippers here. Oklahoma City, they haven't won a road game all year. They've been awful away from home. They're just not a good team overall. And the Clippers just dropped to 150 on the road against Atlanta in their last game. Paul George is finally healthy again. The team's starting to click as everyone feared that they would. I think the Clippers will win this game by double digits. We'll lean to the Clippers on that one. And moving into the rest of the college basketball card, really not a fan of much. I gave up my thoughts on the one game I actually liked in this card. I'll lean to the under in the UCLA Southern Utah game at under 137. Both teams don't really have great offenses. They've actually played pretty good defense. And UCLA with Mick Cronin loves to slow the tempo and play with relative physicality. I think that'll lead to fewer points. I'll lean to the under on that one. Moving on, what else do I like? I think that's pretty much it in terms of what I actually like on today's card. I know Monmouth is terrible, but Pittsburgh isn't great either. I don't trust Pittsburgh laying 15.5. What else do I like? I'm actually going to lean to UNC Greensboro -9.5 against Appalachian State. UNC Greensboro lost in a half-court buzzer beater against Montana State in their last game. Appalachian State plays no defense at all, and Greensboro is an elite defensive unit. I think that the conflicting styles will benefit Greensboro. They'll slow the pace. They'll control just the pace of play, which I think will dictate everything because Appalachian State loves to run and chuck up threes. I think Greensboro win by double digits. Lean to Greensboro on that one. But the play of the day, once again, will be on Utah State -19, which is available on DraftKings at -110. Other than that, though, that's going to be this installment of Scott Selections here for Monday, November 18th. Good luck to all of you and your respective bets today. Bye, everyone.